Hi, hello, my name is Devraj. Welcome back to this series about concepts from therapy. Today we're going to be talking about trauma. And it's a subject sometimes which is itself surrounded with a bit of mystery and fear because often if I look back to my own childhood growing up in Essex and then London in the UK, it wasn't done to consider yourself in any way to be traumatized. You could be traumatized as hell, but you didn't want to show that in any way. And so the subjects become a bit, shrouded in mystery and fear. And oh, am I traumatized? Do I dare look at it? And hopefully, our culture will move on from that perspective, and it will be more okay just to talk about traumatic stuff that's happened in your life. But anyway, even if it doesn't, there's a lot you can do about trauma, and the initial thing is to start to understand it. So this piece is called Understanding Trauma. I've made a few notes on the side here, so I'll flick and look. Let's start by just looking what is trauma, basically. And trauma is essentially any form of, emotionally provocative event that's happened to you that hasn't been processed. If, for example, I was to suddenly pick up a hammer and whack myself on the finger, I might suddenly go, ah! Screaming. I feel pain and I express a sound. These are natural ways that our body, being, a biological vessel, a thing, expresses and releases emotions. And maybe if I bashed my finger with a hammer and just went like this and held it all inside, then that would be a traumatic event because I haven't really expressed the emotion. I haven't felt what's going on. I've just contracted myself, contracted my throat and my breathing, and held it inside. So that hopefully gives you a basic understanding of what trauma is. When someone says they've been traumatized, what they're really saying is, something has happened to me and I haven't fully felt or expressed the emotions yet. It's not clear. There's a charge. We talk about being held inside the body. And let's look at the body now, because the body is really important in understanding trauma, because the muscle system of the body is where trauma is essentially stored, if you want to think of it like that. It's quite an easy way to think of it. And the muscles take on irregular, unnatural shapes and patterns as we hold feelings in and don't allow them to be expressed, don't allow ourselves to feel what's happened. And it starts because basically, even though we have 9 months inside our mother to grow, the brain does not really fully develop until we're 2, 3, 4 years old. And even then it's still learning and developing. And so, very powerful emotional events which happen to us in early childhood, the brain may decide, hey, it's not ready to feel and to express yet. And so it simply stores them in the muscle system of the body. The intention being that later in life, when we feel more safe and more together, we can really let it out. But of course, we often don't. We don't. And we live in a culture which doesn't really encourage us to express our feelings so much. And so essentially what happens in the body is either holding patterns or dead zones. And that's irregular patterns of activity in the muscles. Your muscles should have a naturally fluid, flexible kind of feeling to them, basically that, your muscle system is open and it can vibrate with energy and it can move in any direction it wants to. If you were to start to take apart the muscle system of pretty much anyone on the planet over the age of 20, you're going to find that muscles, a lot of areas are very, very stiff and rigid. It's unnatural. It's because a lot of feelings have been suppressed in the muscles. Another thing that can happen to the muscles is they go dead or limp completely. It's like, this is even more extreme in a sense, that we totally evacuate a certain area of our muscle system with our awareness, and just it becomes like a kind of dead zone inside of us where we don't go and we don't feel. Okay, so that's giving you a little bit of an understanding of the body. And let's just look briefly, what kind of traumas happen to us? Essentially there's 2 types of trauma, as I see it. And one is disconnection wounds or disconnection traumas, where you expect something to happen or someone to be there and they're not there. Maybe your mother was not present when you needed her, say, for example, and it's like reaching out for your mama and she's not there. She's not there. That leaves, that's a traumatic incident, and it can leave a trace in the body unless we fully can express that wound and that sadness. The second category is called invasion wounds. The first category is disconnection is when you want something, you expect something, and it's not there. And the second category is invasion wounds, where something's coming in much more. It's instead of you reaching out for it, something's coming into you that you didn't invite or expect. And so that's how the two types of wounds balance each other. One is reaching out, one is coming in. And typically you've got things like basic invasion wounds are forms of abuse, being shouted at a lot as a kid perhaps, or even later in life. That's invading your space. Maybe you were physically assaulted. Someone invaded your space, invaded your body. Maybe you were emotionally abused. Maybe you were sexually abused. Stuff or you didn't expect to happen where someone came in way too close, basically. And once again, when we can't fully express the feeling in the moment and let it go in the way that most biological creatures do, it becomes held in the muscle system. Everything becomes stored in the muscle. Why do we accumulate trauma? Why does it not? Why do we not just let it go? Essentially, as I said, it's because the brain takes a while to develop, and so you've got early life incidences where it wasn't developed enough to really release, and some bad stuff happened. And then you've got later life incidents where something happens, and there's either a background of not really expressing that type of feeling, or it's just very intense in the moment, and we just hold it in. We easily develop a pattern of just holding stuff in. Relating to early childhood, if you look at supposedly more primitive cultures such as in Asia or in India, you often see the little kids up to the age of 5 are treated with phenomenal level of care. They're like little princes and princesses. And there is a useful reason for that. As you can see, the minimal amount of psychological attack that you get in that in that time of your life from 0 to 5, and the minimal amount of disconnection that you experience, that keeps the trauma levels down. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about what we can do about trauma, because you'll probably recognize, if you're self-aware, there's quite a lot inside of you, maybe, disconnection wounds, invasion wounds, all sorts of stuff that has happened. And what happens essentially is, I'm going to go in a different direction. Okay, what are we going to look at? Because I teach bioenergetics principally, I teach some other therapies as well, but that's the thing that really focuses on holding out of the muscles and getting awareness back into your body, into the muscles. And this is the core of removing the influence of trauma from your life. Because it may be that you developed as a kid quite a low self-esteem, perhaps keeping your head down as a reaction to invasion or attack of some form, or wanting something and it not being there, not reaching out too much for fear of getting, hurt again. We develop a low self-esteem, and this you can sometimes correct by working with the mind and building yourself up and getting really positive about things, and it's all good. But the problem is, what do you do with the muscle system that's still got the energy inside of it? It's still got the wound held inside there. What are you going to do with the muscle system? And that's why you need some level of corrective body work or bioenergetics, which you don't really have to pay so much for. You just develop a practice and start to stick with it and maybe do a workshop every now and again. And bioenergetics is a body movement therapy which has 3 core elements. One is you're going to move the body either into a certain position or in a repetitive movement, and you have to maintain that movement or that position to the edge of your comfort zone. That's the key, the edge of your comfort zone. Not too much, so that you're just creating pain for yourself, and not too little, so you're taking it really cozy. That's the first element. Edge of the comfort zone with the body position. Second element is breath. You have to really breathe, and breathe down through the mouth into your belly and engage. What you'll see when you put your body in a stress position is usually very straight away we contract. We go into survival mode and wait for it to end and sort of think, I see people doing yoga and their body is not open at all. They're just in their mind trying to hold the position, and it's okay to develop muscular strength. Or people going down the gym and their body is not open at all. Often they're actually compressing the wounds in even deeper. They don't have to, but the way they're doing the practice is creating that. And it may even be on a psychological level part of why they're doing it. But to go back to where we were before, you need to breathe when you're doing these kind of exercises, when you're working the deeper breath, because at a bodily level, trauma is held in it's held in the body by not breathing. We're shutting down our breathing. We don't feel our belly. We don't breathe through the mouth. We don't allow ourselves to breathe more deeply, and the trauma stays in. So you need to breathe more deeply. And the third aspect of bioenergetics and of trauma release in general is to feel the body. Keep on feeling. You've got your body in this weird position. You're breathing as deep as you can, and you need to feel the body. This is the key. When you look at, when I look at my life, I can spend ages in distraction. And there's usually something, some distraction may be okay just to chill out, but some of it is like, we're constantly moving away from core wounds inside of us. It's like our interior world has become like a battlefield, and we need to stay out of there. And what you need to do is change this attitude, especially when you're doing therapy groups or doing bioenergetics, that you really have the attitude you want to feel. This is the core. Develop the attitude, hey, I want to feel what's going on inside of me. And then as you use bioenergetics to open your body, or you use breathwork practices, whatever, you allow more feeling to come. And it may not be anywhere near as bad as your mind thinks it is. So really what we're doing when we try to talk about removing trauma, or when we're talking about bioenergetics, is we're talking about opening up the body's muscle system and allowing all the stuff that's compressed in there to come out. It's a cleansing. It's a cleansing. Getting your body energetically really smooth and clean and feeling good. Let's talk a little bit about, because I've been teaching bioenergetics some years and teaching it online for about 18 months, and I see habitual things that come up, so I'm going to talk a little bit about what's called resistance, which is basically the desire not to change and what happens and how it manifests. Because this is where, if you're practicing on your own, you need to be sharp. You need to be able to maintain a practice, and you need to set out how long you're going to do, and what you're going to do, and stick with it. What happens in distraction is we start to think, oh, nothing's happening, I'm going to move on and do something else. This is a classic way we avoid staying inside something. The mental belief that nothing is happening. Probably you're on the edge of something happening. So catch yourself if this happens. Bring yourself back. Develop a certain level of basic discipline. Not tough, hard like a sergeant major, but basic self-respect and discipline. I said I'm going to do this practice for 20 minutes. I'm going to do it for 20 minutes. Develop that discipline. Check in with yourself when you're in position. Are you breathing and feeling? You're not achieving very much if you're just getting through it in survival mode. And I see so many people working on their own. When they come to me, they're doing bioenergetics in survival mode. It's no good. You've got to open your body and feel. Allow yourself to feel. This is the time that you set aside of the day or the week to go into and open and develop. You must breathe. You must feel. You must really have the intention to go in there and do it. Okay, not just, okay, I'm getting through my 20-minute session and I've done it now. You got to understand that the resistance to change comes from the fact that the average human being, to be honest, has so much trauma inside of them, that their personality by the age of even 25 is pretty hardened. It's like set in concrete, and this is not natural. It's not natural, So, this, and people get used to us being a certain way, emotionally, psychological, whatever. They get used to us being a certain way. So, there's this kind of sense that you're set in stone by other people looking at you and by all the holding in your body. And you need to be willing to change. As you start to open up your body, stuff is going to change. You're going to feel more. Maybe there's areas of your emotionality where you don't feel much. Maybe you don't get angry. Maybe you have judgments about anger, which you developed a belief system to cover over anger. Anger is a very healthy emotion. Maybe you don't get sad. Maybe you don't ever feel really vulnerable or weak or powerless. Maybe you had to be really hard and strong and in control when you were a kid. That was what you learned. So, expect other emotions to come up. Maybe you never get jealous. You've got a partner, but you're never jealous. And suddenly you start to feel extreme jealousy. It's because there's a lot of feelings inside the body. So it's important to have a level of attitude. You don't make yourself wrong in any way for what you're feeling. And that brings us a little bit onto the last sense. We've looked at why resistance can come and what you can do about resistance, being gently disciplined with yourself. The other aspect of it is, it's if you're going to go on a journey of opening, it's good to try and get some level of support as well. Try and find people that you can share about what's going on for you, as your heart and your belly starts to open more with emotional expression, with bioenergetics, breath work, these kinds of body-based therapies. It's nice. You often feel like you want a bit of a deeper connection with people, so look around for people that you can create a deeper connection with. You know, you may find that the people you've got as mates or buddies right now, they're more into drinking or going out, and they've got their behaviors where they avoid themselves set in stone, and they don't really want someone who's going deeper inside. So look for people, you know, rather than trying to, you know, look around even online. There's people that you can share with, you know, people that you can share with. See what's going on in your local area. It's very useful. It's good to be aware that, you know, as we open up the muscle system of the body and feelings that have been held there start to come up, you might notice yourself being more volatile than usually. You might suddenly get angry about slightest little thing. And that's a marker, you know, you're getting disproportionately angry. The old invasion wounds basically are coming up from the past, and you feel like you really want to put the energy out. And your mind is looking for a situation, and, you know, someone crosses a little bit in front of you, not a big deal, and you're in a massive reaction. You've got to become aware, okay, you can go back and apologize, and also become aware, okay, something's really happening. I need to go a bit deeper into it in my own practice, or find a workshop, stuff like that. Strong emotional reactions. Something to be aware of. We mentioned the two types of traumatic wounding: disconnection and invasion. And disconnection wounds tend to be held around the heart level, you know. They're associated with sadness often. We're very sad at our mother not being there, our dad not being emotionally present for us, what it is. And often when you're in disconnection wounds a bit, and you're in the feeling, you need other people around you. You want more close connection and nourishment. And on the other side of the coin, when you're working more, these emotions are held, in the really around the center of the chest. They're often experienced as. When you're working with invasion wounds, you know, then basically you're working here in the gut level. Essentially, you're working in the gut level, and those kinds of wounds tend to be, when they come up, you get more angry. You know, you want to state clear boundaries for yourself. Makes sense, huh? And when you're working with those kind of wounds, you may want, you know, if you're a very sociable person, you may suddenly feel a little bit unsafe. You know, whereas before you were really chatty and around people, you may be feeling more vulnerable and unsafe, and you may need to create a bit more space for yourself in your life. Just be aware of these principles. You know, everyone's different. Okay, I think that's all I've got to say about trauma for today. I hope you found the talk useful. And I've done a kind of write-up of covering the principles, if you like, written stuff, which I'll link to underneath. And also feel free to come along to a workshop or to get in touch with me. I'm happy to give voice messages. I don't like to type too much in response to long sort of written questions and stuff. I also do one-to-one sessions in Dorset and in Brighton, and I run workshops. So thank you for listening, and over and out. I hope it's been useful.